A woman named Iris is lying in bed next to her husband. After a few seconds, she gets up and takes a toy boat with her before going downstairs. She then takes out a small pocket knife before leaving the house, leaving her phone on the charger. She then gets in her car and drives away. Finally, she stops in a state park. She gets out of her car and heads toward the park, where she starts to climb a hill. She finally reaches the top and heads toward a memorial of her late deceased son, Mateo, who died during a family hiking trip. Afterward, she goes to the edge of the cliff and tries to jump off. Before she unalive herself, a man appears beside her, admiring the beautiful view. He introduces himself as Richard and asks Iris to step back from the edge. But Iris is pretty determined to jump and tells him he will not stop her. Richard tells her that he understands she wants to be alone, and that the reason he came up the hill is because he wants to be alone too. He tries to talk to her about the memorial, but Iris doesn't want to talk about it. Richard then tells her that he used to be a car lover, even when he couldn't afford it. He tells her that when he was back in grad school he had an Integra car, which he loved a lot. And 1 week before his graduation he crashed his car straight into a brick wall. He says that the worst thing about the accident was that his girlfriend, Chloe, was with him. Unfortunately, Chloe loses her life in the accident, and Richard says he isn't proud of his last words to her. He tells her that he has been paralyzed for over 2 months, and during that time, everyone who comes to visit him tells him how sorry they are for him, while all he wants is to die. Iris then jokingly tells him sorry. Iris then tells him that her son died while he was trying to gather sticks to roast some marshmallows because she betted him that he couldn't gather all the sticks in under a minute. She and her husband didn't even hear him when he died. She says that the world takes what it wants, and she wishes it would have taken her instead. She says she wants to cry, but she is too broken to do that. Richard tells her that broken doesn't have to mean hopeless. He says that he is not going to try to change what she does next, but tells her that it is a very beautiful day. Before he heads out, Iris tells him her name. After a few minutes, Iris decides not to jump, and she catches up to Richard. Finally, they reach their car and Iris tells him goodbye. Iris tries to get inside her car but struggles because Richard has parked his car close to her. Richard then comes to her side holding an umbrella. Iris asks him why he has an umbrella, and Richard tells her she can never be too prepared. Richard then starts to get close to her, and Iris tries to tell him to back off. He asks her why she keeps calling him Richard before he electrifies her with the umbrella and knocks her out. Richard then puts her in the back of his car and drives away. After a while, Iris regains consciousness and finds out that both her hands and legs have been tied up. She tries to call for help using her smartwatch, but Richard tells her they are out of range, and it will not work without her phone or a Wi-Fi connection. She tries to plead, but Richard doesn't care. He then gives her the toy boat she was carrying. Iris then reaches into her back pocket and takes out her knife. She then asks him about his girlfriend to distract him while she cuts her hand zip tie. She finally frees her hands and tries to stab Richard, causing the car to crash into a nearby tree. Iris then tries to strangle him using the belt, but Richard manages to roll the seat backward and escape. Iris then gets out of the car and cuts the zip tie off her legs. She tries to call for help, but no one is there. Richard asks her if she has felt it yet, and reveals that he has already injected her with some kind of paralyzing agent. He tells her that she has 20 minutes before her entire body shuts down. At minute 1 her motor skills will shut down, like dialing a phone or holding an object. At minute 10 her legs will start to tingle, and at minute 15 her legs will stop completely. At 18 her breathing will become labored, and finally, at minute 20 her voice will stop working. Richard tries to convince her to give up, but Iris runs into the forest, dropping her pocket knife behind in the process. After she ran for a while, she stopped and tried to check her fingers by counting, all while remembering when she was teaching her son how to count numbers using his fingers. Suddenly, Richard shows up and tells her that they are going to have the whole weekend together, forcing her to run again. She then tries to check her fingers again but finds it difficult to count all of them. Iris sets a 20-minute timer on her smartwatch and tries to escape further, but her legs start to tingle. After she walks further, she sees she has 3 minutes left before her legs give up. She then continues to walk, but unfortunately, the 3 minutes end and both of her legs shut down. Iris then continues to crawl away. Richard finally reaches her, but Iris manages to crawl to a nearby tree trunk and hides inside. Soon a swarm of ants starts to go all over her body, and Iris finally makes a sound, alerting Richard to her location. Before he can catch her, Iris manages to crawl to a nearby river and escapes by floating on her back. After a while, she manages to grab a nearby tree branch to break her speed and then crawls her way out. Iris then struggles to breathe. As her breathing becomes labor, she finally lays down as the 20-minute timer goes off, and her whole body, including her voice, shuts down. She then hears a man cutting down the grass nearby. The man stopped the machine before he ran her over. The man is revealed to be an elder named Bill. He tries to ask if she is okay, but Iris can't answer him. Bill then flips her to her back to check her visual and sees she can see. When he asks her if she can hear him, she replies by blinking her eyes. 1 blink for yes and 2 blink for no. He asks her if she can see and hear him, and Iris replies by blinking once. Bill then asks her if she is hurt, and Iris blinks twice. Bill then goes over to grab a wheelbarrow and puts Iris on it before he takes her inside his house. Before Bill can call the cops, someone knocks on his door. Iris then starts to blink rapidly, trying to tell him not to open the door. But Bill goes over and opens the door and finds Richard there. Richard acts out all innocent and tells Bill that he was in a car accident and he has lost his wife, and says he couldn't call for help because he has lost his cell phone too. Bill tells him to stay outside while he goes inside to call the cops. Richard follows him inside the house and tells Bill he needs to rest for a bit while checking inside the home. He then walks up to the wheelbarrow, but Iris is no longer there. Bill tells him to get out of his house or he is going to call the cops on him and report him as an intruder. Richard then fakes a cry and says he is sad he lost his wife. Bill sympathizes with him and hangs up the phone. Bill asks for his name, and Richard says it is Andrew. He says that his wife always struggles with her mental illness, and tells Bill that if the cops find her, they will take her away. He sobbingly tells Bill he can't lose her because he loves her. Bill asks him what her name is, and Richard says it is Chloe. It is revealed that Iris is hiding behind a couch Richard is sitting on. Richard says she sometimes refuses to move or talk when her illness gets worse. He then asks Bill if he has a wife, and Bill says she has died from a heart attack. Bill then tells Richard that he wasn't telling him the truth. Before Bill could tell him about Iris, Richard's phone began to ring. Bill asks him how he got his phone because Richard has said he lost his phone during the accident. Bill then tells him that his wife might still be in the woods and advises him to keep looking. Richard then calls Bill by his name and asks him why he has a wheelbarrow in the kitchen. Bill tells him that he took Iris back to the shed. Before Richard goes to check, Bill attacks him and knocks him down. He then calls the cops and tells them his location. Richard then tries to attack him, but Bill overpowers him and knocks him down again. Richard then manages to grab a knife and stab Bill in the leg. He then takes him down and stabs him in the chest, before stabbing him repeatedly until Bill is dead. Richard then goes to the shed to take Iris but doesn't find her there. Instead, Richard takes out gasoline and starts to pour it all over the house. Iris manages to move her finger against the ground to make a noise to notify Richard she is there. Richard hears it, but before he finds her he sees the gas dripping from the couch and mistakes it for the noise. After he finishes pouring the gas all over the house, he sets it on fire, all while Iris is still inside. Iris, on her last attempt at survival, manages to grab the shutter of the window and starts to open and close it to get Richard's attention. Richard then gets into Bill's car, but before he drives away, he sees the window. He then gets back in the house and gets Iris out and puts her in the car before driving away. On the road, Richard gets a phone call again and picks it up to reveal his daughter. She tells him that she has got good grades on her report card and says they are coming over to his cabin to celebrate, ruining whatever plan he had to do to Iris. He then talks to his wife and tries to convince her not to come, but she tells him they are coming anyway. Richard, having no choice, finally agrees. Richard, feeling enraged, tries to pass a car in front of him and nearly collides with an incoming bus before he manages to get back on his side of the lane. Richard then pulls over to the gas station to fill up the truck. He puts a hat on Iris to make her look like she is asleep. He gets out of the truck and sees firefighters going to Bill's house. After he goes to pay the cashier, Iris tries to loosen her belt as there are a lot of people in the area. After a struggle, she finally manages to loosen the belt. She then manages to slide her body to the door and her hat comes off. A little boy then sees her, who reminds Iris of her son. Iris tries to speak, but the boy's mother comes and takes him away. Before she can get any help, Richard comes back and straps her to the belt again before he drives away. As they leave, Iris sees the little boy's mom looking concerned. Richard then drives to his first car. He puts a bunch of zip ties and a syringe on the dashboard before covering it with clothes. He takes out new clothes from his car and changes. Meanwhile, Iris starts to count her fingers, and her movements are slowly returning. Richard then hooks the chain of the truck to his car to tow it away. As he does this, a cop drives up to them. The cop tells Richard that someone, which was the lady at the gas station, has called and reported about the condition of Iris. The cop asks to talk to Iris, but Richard tells him that she is drunk and won't talk to him. The cop asks for Richard's ID and sees that it has expired. Richard tells him that Iris was drunk and took his car for a joyride and crashed it on a tree. He says that he got here after the accident, but the cop asks him how he got the scratches on his face, and Richard has a hard time to answer him. As they talk, Iris manages to open her window, and the cop goes to her to check if she is okay and senses some danger. Richard tries to cover up by saying she was trying to leave him after their son died, but suddenly Iris tries to speak up and whispers to the cop for help. The cop then takes the clothes off of the dashboard and sees the syringe and zip ties. Before he can react, Richard manages to grab the car chain and hits the cop in the face. The cop tries to get his gun out, but Richard strikes him in the head with the chain hard, killing him. Richard then puts his body back in his car before setting it on fire, before he drives off with Iris. On the road, Iris speaks up and tells him that things aren't going as he planned. She asks if he has lost his mind when he was paralyzed for 2 months, making Richard angry. He stops the car and tells her he didn't lose his mind, but instead found clarity. Before his accident, he was disconnected from everybody, but after he saw his girlfriend taking her last breath, he finally got connected. Richard says that his final word to his girlfriend was thank you. Iris tells him that she knows he loves his family very much, and tells him that if he continues to do this, he will eventually get caught and will never see his family again. She asks him just to let her go because she doesn't know his real name or where he lives. She tells him that broken doesn't have to mean hopeless. Richard tells her that he is not broken and says that he has changed his plan before he drives back. He finally drives to a river and pulls up. Iris, using all her energy, tries to inject Richard with the syringe, but loses the power to pump the drug. Richard then takes the syringe from her and pumps the drug out. Iris asks him why he stops her from killing herself in the first place if he is going to kill her, but Richard tells her that it was fate and that she was meant for him. He then takes a knife from the back of the truck before he takes her body out and begins to drag her to a boat. Richard then takes her to the middle of the river, planning to throw her body out once he kills her. Iris cries and asks him to at least let her hold her son's toy before she dies. Richard then finally decides to grant her wish and goes to give her the toy. As he unties her, Iris tells him that she is not sorry before she takes his knife and stabs him in the neck. Richard pulls the knife out and tries to shoot her, but Iris moves the boat, making him drop his gun and fall into the river. As he begins to climb back into the boat, Iris manages to crawl toward the gun and takes it before she shoots at him, hitting him multiple times. Iris then lays down in the boat for a while, before the boat starts to sink due to the bullet holes. She then slowly starts to sink as her hands are tied up. After a while, Iris manages to swim up. She then manages to swim to the shore and lays down for a minute. Iris then starts counting her fingers again and sees that her body has fully recovered. She then sees Richard crawling out of the water in the distance. Iris goes over to him as he takes his last breath and kneels beside him. She then says thank you to him before she leaves him for dead.